Well, hey, we're live. We're live. I'm here with Kyle Shepard, and we have a very it's going to be a really good conversation today. I had Kyle on episode 45 last year. That was back in April, and I remember at the time where I was at 11 Mile State Park in Colorado in my RV. Right now, I'm hanging out with the family. I'm going to probably embark soon on another mission out to Arizona, maybe in a month or so. Uh, but I remember that was the last time we talked on the podcast, and it was phenomenal. I'm going to say, as you're listening, I'm going to introduce Kyle, and I'm going to introduce just his background. But before I do that, I will say the last time we talked, I think I took like 5 pages of notes. You can like watch the YouTube the video. I'm just like writing notes the whole time because Kyle has a ton of information and knowledge. So if you have like a notepad with you, or if you're listening to the podcast after we go live, go ahead and like hit pause, like get a notepad out, or just on your phone, on your laptop, have something to take some notes because I just found that a lot of that was really useful. Speaking of Kyle, but with Kyle, so we're on Substack Live right now, and Kyle's a great Substack. It's a resilient mental state, and Kyle talks a lot about like Stoic philosophy, building, sustaining mental resilience. And Kyle also is a stress and management resilience instructor for the Navy. I think you've been doing that, is it close to 12 years now
I've been in the
or so?
Navy for a little over 12, and yeah, so a little less than that, about 10 years I've been actually teaching it, but I've been involved almost my entire career. It was, about a year into the Navy is when I found this cool program, got formally trained, and then progressively started getting more and more involved.
So and I think when we talked last time, you were saying, I think it was like around COVID time, right? Was when you started to really get into writing. And is that when you built out your Substack too, around that time?
No,
Or was it a
that
little
was
bit
just
after that?
personal writing, journaling, sharing with my wife who was doing the same thing during COVID. And it wasn't until I wrote a few articles for my professional magazine, for the American Academy of Audiology, because I had done some presentations on stress management and resilience. They asked me if I'd write a few articles, peer reviewed. I was pretty proud of them when they were done. And then did a few for the military. And I was talking to a buddy like, hey, I think this is a decent product. Like, where should I put these things? And he's like, dude, you're on Substack already. Why wouldn't you post it there? And he's like, why don't you try to keep going with it? So his suggestion, it's actually the buddy I told you about before we went live. So the owner of the gym that I train at. Yeah, that was back in February of 2024 is when I started posting once a week and did that for some time without anyone really reading it because I would just post and ghost. But then I was an avid reader more than I was a writer. And then the more I started engaging with amazing people like yourself, it turned into something pretty cool. And it's one of my favorite things that I do now.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And on notes too, you're always just posting I think things that are very motivational. I would say just grounded too, common sense stuff. But I think the way you put it, it definitely sticks with me whenever I see it. So if you guys are on Substack, definitely go and follow, subscribe to Kyle. And then you talked about audiology. So I also just wanted to introduce the audience too. You have your clinical doctorate in hearing and balance, which is audiology, right?
Yes, sir. Yep. So that's what took me and brought me into the Navy. So I commissioned back in 2013. I just finished my doctorate program and learned about that route. My primary job in the military is hearing conservation. It's called an occupational audiologist, where I deal with the number one injury in the military every year, noise-induced damage. But as I mentioned, I got into stress management, and it's always interesting the overlap between some of the stuff I deal with clinically or on the hearing conservation side, whether it's noise-induced damage, ringing in the ears, balance problems. And you see in my writing, I talk a lot about fitness exercises and how it contributes to balance or performance. Tinnitus is amazingly interesting phenomenon where we have this audio sensation in our ears where there is no
Mm.
external sound producing it. And how you manage that, there is no medication or cure. It is truly through habituation, conditioning the mind once you understand it and learn how to change your perspective on that stressor, which is this sound that you really can't control otherwise if there is no physical cause of it, which we tease out as audiologists. So it's been really interesting as I get more and more into stress management, looking at how a lot of what I deal with in my clinical profession relates so much to stress management and resilience.
That's fascinating. That's a whole rabbit hole we could probably go down. I just have all these questions in my head. Uh, but yeah, so for the topic, and thanks for explaining that.
Yeah.
I think sometimes when I hear the word, I'm like, doctorate in ideology. He's not that ideological, And
As
so
I
thanks for.
As I told you, I've gotten that many times. Like, I do like to come up with ideas, but I surely don't have a doctorate in it at all. But
that'd
another
be,
thing I'd
that'd
like
be,
to say with
yeah, go ahead.
ideology, so noise-induced damage is the number one injury in the military every year. So I'll give safety
Mm,
stand downs, whether it's related to preventing that number one injury and the strategies that we have around it. But then when I talk about stress or stress management, I'll use that analogy of I deal with the number one injury every year. It's about 10% prevalence across the Department of War. People will experience some amount of noise induced damage every year, which is high prevalence. 1 in 10 people will have permanent, significant damage to their hearing, which is irreversible. And then I asked the room,
wow.
how many people deal with stress? Of course, every hand in the room goes up. So these injuries sometimes, noise-induced damage, we have a really good monitoring system where people, if you're in the hearing conservation program, which everyone in the Army, everyone in the Marine Corps is because they're required to qualify in the range annually. Majority of the Navy and the Air Force is too, because they're just exposed to hazardous noise, whether it's on ships, aircraft, you name it in the job. So enormous
Mm,
program, and they're required to have their hearing tested annually compared to a baseline to see if there's been a potential shift in that hearing. So someone like myself will look at those results and then determine if follow-up's needed and then confirm what is contributing to that and then try to intervene as early as possible. Stress and the impacts it has, or ruts that we'll talk about today, those injuries, if you do sustain them because you don't recover from them, they're often invisible. And unfortunately, they can change your mindset, your perspective, even your wiring and how you view
mm,
the world if you're in them long enough. So you see this cultural shift over the past at least decade, maybe a little bit more, toward mental health awareness, and I think a lot of good comes from that. Of course, pendulum swings. There's some harm that comes with that too,
sure.
but good and bad to all things. But I do like thinking more about how can we identify stressors, think about our responses to them and that stress, so we can effectively manage it and eventually overcome it, which is how I define resilience: the ability to effectively manage and eventually overcome or recover from stress. I usually say recover because I like talking about recovery.
Yeah, and I mean that fits in the topic I talk about a lot too, right? Is recovery with porn and the relationship with it. And I think as we'll find out, I think talking as we talked last time on the podcast on episode 45, I mean a lot of this stuff, I mean it's psychology, it's physical connected to mental, right? It's I think I how I used to think about it before, like when I didn't quite like fully understand and have like the education and the language. It's almost like, hey, like that, well, that's in that compartment over there, that's in that box. But really, I mean, a lot of this stuff's very interconnected. And I think when we talk about these concepts, I mean, they can apply to addictions, they can apply to, like we're going to talk about today, ruts. Like it could be a rut that you're having in the day, could be a season that you're in. It could be something like, hey, I've been in this rut for a while. And that's really what we wanted to talk about today is finding resilience in the rut and then how to regain traction when your life just feels stuck. So, before I ask Kyle a question, I just want to give a little bit of background why this podcast occurred. At least for me, I reached out to Kyle because I felt like I was in a rut. I would say, I mean, I got divorced back in March 2023. I was married for 5 years. A big part of why I write, why I talk is because, my relationship with porn deeply affected my relationship. And I feel like as I was in recovery in my marriage, some good things, some bad, but just created a lot of pain and pain eventually that, just caused that split. Um, so with all that being said, went through the divorce and I've been in this place since March of 2023 of kind of ups and downs of really just redefining, I think, myself in a way, like trying to find my identity again, because, sometimes you feel like you're on the right path and you know what you're doing. And then other times you like look back, you're like, wow, I was in a house like in the mountains with deer in my yard. And now I'm traveling the country in an RV. Like, this is kind of weird. And I feel like last year was a great year. A lot of good things happened. But also I just felt like my routines were a little bit off. Felt like I was in a deep rut, I think, with my physical health. I was having a hard time, I think, getting a routine in with working out, gained some weight. I think that really pulled on my mentality a lot. And there were a lot of times I feel like last year, to be honest, where it was like hard to get out of bed. I feel like my writing and my podcast really helped kind of get me through those moments. But there was other parts of my life that were clearly and obviously things I'm like, I gotta like focus on this stuff because, I don't want to stay here. And I think that's part of at least, and I'll ask you in a second, what you feel like a rut is, but I think it's kind of like those, it's not exactly always like a crisis, but it's something where you feel like you're stuck, you're drifting. It's like you're functioning, but you're not really going anywhere. And that's why I reached out to Kyle because Kyle's, an expert on resilience. And I think sometimes, like even the podcast we talk about these concepts, and it's kind of like sometimes like what you need to do, but you still just feel like it's hard to do it and to do it consistently. So that's a little bit of entry point and just to, why I reached out to you, why I think it would be a good topic. I mean, we all get stuck in ruts, right? And then it's the beginning of the year, right? So we have our New Year's resolutions. I think a lot of people are like looking at things in their life like, hey, I want to change this. I want to, be sober for this amount of time or whatever, right? But oftentimes it might be to address possibly a rut that we're in. So I'll stop talking. I'll send it over to you. But just in your mind, how do you look at like what like a rut is that season?
Yeah, I like to simply define things as best as I can. And when I thought about when you proposed this topic, and appreciate that backstory, brother. I mean, you're always
Yeah.
vulnerable. You're always sharing details of your life, which not only is good for you to share and put out there open, because now you make it even realer than what's going on in your head. But of course, you're helping others as you do it, and that's admirable. But so when I thought about that, like, how would I define a rut? Which I mean, we'll talk about some of mine too. God, you said it very well that it could be very short lived. It could be in a day, it could be a season, it could be for a long time. I would just call a rut a prolonged, unproductive perspective, or
Yeah,
maybe
that's good.
a prolonged, unproductive attitude, even. So,
Mm,
and that attitude, I guess I would stick with attitude because, like you said, we're still functioning, but just something's not aligning with maybe our mentality and what we know we should be doing. And you also said something important earlier too about concepts and overlapping to different domains of life. And I'm
mm,
looking for those overlapping concepts, not only in my example with ideology and stress management, but really just you mentioned Stoic philosophy before, but I love so many forms of philosophy. Um, or just different ideas, even if I don't agree with them, just looking for where's the overlap? Where do I agree? What makes sense across all threads of humanity? That especially that can be empowering and productive. And that's easier said than done when you're in a rut and you don't have the best attitude. But if your physical health is not dialed in the way that you want to, and everyone's different. Maybe you're in a place where objectively speaking, you're not as physically healthy as you could be, but you're really comfortable in that body and you're functioning there. I mean, everyone's different. I'm very passionate about physical health and functional fitness. And I do believe that the body influences the mind and the mind influences the body. You could be as smart and brilliant and positive as you can be, but if you're not physically healthy, that's going to be draining. Everything is going to cost more energy than it could have otherwise. So I look at health kind of in four buckets: mental, physical, social, and spiritual.
mm,
And if one of those buckets is not taken care of well, I mean, there's a potential risk factor for a prolonged unproductive attitude. And I think about that being a symptom. So I try to, and it's funny you mentioned my notes, and thank you, because really I'm just talking shit to myself through notes. Like that's these things that I would be telling myself. So like I never try to. I'm not preaching other than to myself. Like these
yeah,
are things that I've either thought or am currently thinking to help me get through whatever it is that
true.
I'm managing.
Very true.
Um, but I think about what can I take that is going to reframe the current perspective I have, because usually my prolonged unproductive attitude starts first with perspective around my environment. And
Mm,
it could come from things that I feel like I should be able to control and I'm not, which usually causes anger. Maybe things that I know I don't have control over and it's impacting me, which is maybe sadness or regret, or maybe my life not aligning with what I think it should be because of work or family situation, you name it. And I have all of these attitudes because of my perspectives not being very authentic, genuine, or true because I can't
mm,
control things outside of myself. And things that have happened, if I'm not willing to accept them, then I'm probably going to be miserable about them. So I do challenge my perspectives first, but it's coincidental we're having this conversation today because James Clear this morning, the author of Atomic Habits, when it
Yeah.
comes to newsletters, not on Substack, I think he has the best one. I have a lot of favorite writers on Substack. I'm on this platform or anything else, but I do get his weekly newsletter, and he'll have a few quotes from himself, a few quotes from others, maybe a reflective question, very succinct email, very empowering, a lot of stuff that I love. And this morning he had one, and it was about, he said, "Don't ruminate, activate," and it was all about perspectives. He didn't. I don't think he used the word rut, but perspectives can only take you so far. You can only be so positive. You can only reframe things so much. But if you're not having productive subsequent actions following those perspectives, you're going to stay in that rut. You can't think yourself out of a problem. You can definitely ruminate a little bit. You can reflect on the past. You can prepare for the future. But my goodness, if you're not activating yourself in the present and tackling challenges that you can manage, regardless of whatever complex problem is in front of you, you're not going anywhere.
Mm, that's such a good point. And yeah, James Clear, I agree. I make it a point every year to read Atomic Habits. I think I've been doing that now for a couple of years. That's a great recovery book, by the way. I'll just say, I mean, it's great for life in general, but uh, I love that because he's very identity focused, on your habits every day and how they form your identity. I think that probably weaves into what we're going to talk about, or what we are talking about, right? Is habits are like that activation that come consistently. And I think part of that is when you get in a rut, at least for me, I just felt like, and part of it, I mean, living on the road, like in the RV, driving to different places, I was in a relationship for a bit. So that kind of changed my routines up. I think that was tough because the activation was almost like, I was getting these signals like, hey, you should probably go to the gym. You should probably get a workout in. I know I talk a lot about, I have daily accountability talks to my little brother. We send each other voice memos. We do like a check in with each other. And my little brother, he's a stud. He plays rugby, and he wrestled in college. And I still, last time we wrestled, I got him.
There you go.
Big brother energy. But no, he's a stud. I mean, if we wrestled now, he'd probably beat me. But he kept telling me, he's like, man, you just got to get a workout in, like swing the kettlebell, like do something. And it was like, he would tell me this, and I'm like, yeah, like I need to do that. But then it was just like I wouldn't get to it, or like I would have maybe the built up, almost like the thought of, well, I got such a steep like road to go, because I felt like just out of shape, all that stuff. And I think it's that mental thing, like you're talking about, like you ruminate on it so much. It's like you think about, okay, I'm gonna have to do this consistently for 3 months or 4 months to start seeing results. Cause I've been in good shape pretty much my whole life, athletics, all of that stuff. And I think for me, I got so stuck in just the rumination mode, as you're saying, where I'm just thinking about it too much. And it's like, well, just pick it up, do some swings, do something, right?
Yeah, we tend to overthink a lot of things, and God knows I do too. And I mean, I try to write on this in different ways as much as I can because I've experienced it so many times in my life. But we can make excuses and justifications for why we can't get that workout in, or why that mistake that we made sense for us, or we really defend ourselves while we continue to judge other people's actions. But I don't think you can truly lie to yourself. I think you can really be delusional and tell yourself that lie. But we know these people where they say these things, and my goodness, does it not align with their actions? And they're so happy, but yet you're around them, and it's like, well, why are you trying to project all this happiness when clearly you have a lot of issues to tackle? Because I think
Mm,
the soul always knows. So you can say as
right.
much as you want, but that's only going to prolong a rut or whatever you want to call it. If your actions are not aligned with your perspectives and definitely your soul, which requires a lot of unpacking. So we can define like causes of ruts like being a breakup, but it could be much deeper than that. So like there's a very surface level reason for why people might identify a rut for some form of a loss. But if you're still struggling with addiction, or if you are not doing other things that you know align with the person that you want to be, you can't lie to yourself about that. You can definitely try. You can tell the people, and maybe you'll get some enablers that will say, "Yeah, sure, I love the accountability checks you have with your brother." By the way, talk about
Yeah.
support systems in place. That is awesome. But yeah, the soul always knows. And I mean, I think you could survive a long time and still live that average lifespan in that kind of mentality. But my goodness, what a waste of an opportunity. And it's not going to be easy at all to change some of these routines, some of these habits. But man, I think about actions that I take and changing some of those habits that you alluded to before, particularly the unproductive ones, from a
Right.
delayed from a we talk about delayed gratification quite a bit, and I love delayed gratification tasks for sure. Usually, if I know it's a little challenging up front, like I mentioned, I got my ass kicked by my professor tonight at jujitsu. And I knew it was going to happen. It had been a while since I had seen him. Came down, so it's actually my professor's professor. So my buddy owns the gym, who's my professor, and
His
his history,
professor.
his
So
history class
he's like
professor.
he's a super sensei.
He's a three-time, world champion and has
Oh
won every
my
IBJJF
gosh.
tournament you can imagine. But he's 10 years older than me and my size. You talk about
Wow.
levels to every game, beat the shit out of me. I knew it was gonna happen, but man, when I left there, even after that misery, I I learned something, and even though I'm
Mm,
pretty sore right now, I feel great. So, delayed gratification tasks, absolutely. I always try to look for those, but I really am cautious too of what things am I doing that produce delayed humiliation? Because
mm,
they usually may be instant gratification, but really just like reactions or justifications from our poor attitude and and by the way, I fail at this daily. I'll snap at the kids because they're not listening. By the way, I'm going to take that first few minutes of our conversation tonight where you said take some notes. I'm a wealth of knowledge. My kids don't listen to me at all. That-
I need to
so
talk to them.
I have 4 children, 8, 6, 4, and 6 months old. My 6-month-old listens quite a bit, but she can't move around too much to, disobey too much yet. But it's not even obeying because I know that my words can only go so far with other people. It's gonna be my actions that they watch much more. So I'm really conscious of that. But me losing my cool is an action. And every time it happens, it's not that I'm like completely ashamed of myself and humiliated, but to some degree, yeah, like that's not the kind of dad I want to be. I want to be able to even just the kind of man I want to be. I want to be able to
Mm,
maintain my calm, my resilience, despite the persistent issues that you might have, which is true of every child, of really not listening the first, second, third, or fourth time. Um, but yeah, so those snap my wife and I talk about it all the time, and we're really big on repair. People are people, you're gonna make mistakes. But man, what are those patterns? What are those situations where these stressors come up and then you just go back to those routines because you fail you function at the level of your training. So like you don't rise to the
mm,
occasion, you fall the level of your training. It's true of all domains. And when things get stressful, you're going to resort to those most likely if you don't have really ingrained strategies that are productive, you're going to resort to those unproductive strategies, that bad attitude, that snapping, that fulfilling the addiction. And rut is just a precursor for the higher likelihood of a relapse if it's a behavior, if it's a
mm.
substance, or even if it's just snapping at your children. And so I'm always thinking about like when I come home from work, if I know the wife has had a bad day, or if I'm at a bad place because it's a hard day at work, what are those threats? What are those precursors that I can really start training my productive attitude? And even right now, you might be hearing my 6-year-old having a hard time outside the room.
Well, it kind of brings me back, and some people hopped on to maybe a little bit after you stated this, but we were talking about defining what a rut was, and I think you nailed it. It was prolonged unproductive attitude. I think that's helpful because I think the way you framed it first was perspective, right? It's our attitude. Well, we talked about perspective, but then we kind of shifted it to attitude.
Yeah.
Want to circle back really quick to you were talking about with BJJ and how you got taught a little bit by the sensei, but the way that you talked about it was your attitude towards it was an attitude of humility, an attitude of hey, there's levels to this, there's things I still need to learn. I would say if you were in a rut, potentially mentally, you would have probably had a different reaction to that, right? It probably would have been a little bit different leaving the gym.
And you absolutely see that, and particularly people earlier in training. So think white belts, maybe even blue belts, whereas ego is still involved. And by the way, I have a big ego. I like to think I have a good management of it, but you got to have an ego to show up and keep learning from failures to come back. But without question, if when I'm in a good place and I look back on my life and the greatest lessons that I've learned, I'm really trying to get better about learning from my successes for sure too. So like where I've done
Mm.
well, how could I do better, or why did I do so well? Reflecting on that. But man, it has been my losses, it has been my failures. They have been the biggest catalyst for change on the mats for sure. If I get beat in competition in front of my teammates because of a stupid mistake or because of a technique that I wasn't that good at defending, I'm not letting that shit happen again. Or at least I'm doing everything in my power to get much better so I'm better prepared next time around. So those losses, those mistakes that we've made in the past, great reflective opportunity to say, I'm not going to avoid that. I'm going to lean into that shit. How do I get better? So because that's an opportunity for me. And again, that's not easy, but that's going to be delayed gratification rather than avoiding instant humiliation because you're going to fail when you're a beginner. You're going to mess up when you don't have developed strategies to respond to chaos with your children, to have hard conversations, whether it's with colleagues or people you care about. It's going to be challenging at
Right.
first and you're going to fuck up, but that's how you learn. You can't get to growth stages without early struggle. And reminding myself of that in every way that I can, that's how you can start creating real change because we just resort to what we know. No one's perfect. There's always opportunity for improvement. And if you stay in that comfort zone, you're going to stay in the likelihood of experiencing ruts for the same reasons in the same ways that you have your entire life.
Yeah. Well, hey, well said. That was a really good way of putting it. As you were talking, I was thinking about just, what I talk about with porn. And you were talking how you ended that, I think really resonated was being stuck in that level of comfort, because I definitely think that's one of the more insidious things I think about porn. And maybe what separates it out from some of the other addictions is because it's free, it's accessible, pretty much look at it whenever you want. People think it's anonymous. I would argue that it's not. I mean, they're selling your data on the back end, and the truth will always come to light, as I found out in my past. But with all that being said, I think the point I was trying to get to was that can be a very. I mean, for me, I think when I look back and you're considering a prolonged, unproductive attitude, um, man, I think it started at the age of 10. And recovery started at like my late 20s. I'm 34 now. But I mean, it took me a really long time, I think, to realize it, to realize maybe and maybe that's a little bit of it too, is um, a prolonged unproductive attitude, but maybe even lack of awareness. Because it wasn't necessarily like I had an attitude. I knew for me it wasn't like a healthy thing. It was, I grew up Catholic. I'm a Christian. Like I knew for that, like, hey, like this is a sin, that type of thing. But I think there was like a little bit of a, hey, I'm going to put that in the box over here. I'm going to compartmentalize it. It's not, hey, like I can do everything else. I got an attitude about everything else, like very optimistic, go getter, all that stuff. I wanted to play college basketball like my dad growing up. So I was like really into sports, all that good stuff. Right. But then there was this like box on the other side, this addiction that was completely unproductive in my life. And later, right, in my 5-year marriage, I devastated it because I just never fully even looked at it as, hey, like you really actually got to like change your attitude about this whole thing, because it's got like a lot of debt to it. It's got a lot of barbs. It's like a fishing line that's all tied up that you got to untangle, that kind of thing. So it just made me think about that, because I think it's not just that a rut, you might feel like sad or depressed, but it also could just be like maybe you're stuck in a place of comfort where you're not really going anywhere, not really progressing.
And I mean, we talked about James Clear before, and I didn't know how long you struggled. And obviously, I didn't realize it started at age 10 and went into your late 20s till you really started trying to address it. So you have an atomic habit. in your brain, hardwired through your developmental years. You, like many young individuals these days, especially now with our smartphones, access to this free thing that will warp your sense of the world, of people in general, of any type of sexual relation. I mean, it is, and the data don't lie. This
Yeah.
is a problem, and you're just one that's willing to speak on it and write on it and be vulnerable with it. But I mean, you saw the podcast. Did you watch the podcast I sent you? Like the Prime Agent, I think is his name, that was on Lex Friedman. That
Yeah.
so like you've opened. While I have never struggled with this, I've definitely viewed it. I've definitely been around it, but just fortunately, for I didn't have a smartphone for a long time, so maybe it wasn't
That's good.
so easily accessible. I didn't get a smartphone until I was in grad school for audiology. So I was rocking that construction worker flip phone. I could T9 almost as fast as people could text on their smartphones. Um, so thankfully, I didn't have access at a young age because who knows? At that developing mind, when you're getting interested in whatever you're interested in with other people. And then you have access to just something that's not meant for developing minds. This is part of your psychology, and your fish school analogy is really good because that in many ways is your brain, at least for the wiring around this unproductive behavior. To where I don't like it, you know this better than me. You probably outside of porn probably had a pretty productive attitude. You're a successful basketball player. Sounds like you have a very supportive family. Um,
Totally.
yeah, so, like, you're a positive dude, but we come back to that behavior and probably the delayed humiliation of the task that you became,
Right.
quite adapted to. That's very challenging and will take a lot of effort, as you know very well over this past year, where, like, you can be clean for a while, but that's still part of you, and then you get into these prolonged unproductive attitudes for a while due to other circumstances, and then we fall back to what we know, to our sources of instant gratification or escape or you name it. And we all have vices in different ways. And again, no one's perfect, but really analyzing what are those behaviors that are producing delayed gratification versus delayed humiliation. And then what can
Mm.
I do to modify not only my perspective around them and reframe for what I want to do, but how can I modify my environment, my actions, create consequences before I even open the app, let alone um, go to the different levels of whatever that addiction was.
Mm. Yeah, and I think, too, as you were talking, I was thinking that, I think you talked about, I think, uh, 4 components of health, right? So you've got your physical health, you've got your mental health, you got your social health, and you have your spiritual health.
For sure.
If I was to think about, like, my relationship with porn, starting from 10, throughout my life through the age of 34, I think ultimately the spiritual aspect, I think, was the heaviest, but that was the one that, didn't really connect the dots on until later, you know, to where I fully, like, was like, "Yeah, like, this is distancing me away from my connection with," and I'm a Christian, from Jesus, to where I have this thing where I'm not even, like, wanting to really talk to him about it,
Right.
let alone somebody else, and I think that really came to a head in my marriage to where, I mean, it was, yeah, come to Jesus meeting, right? Like, that's how it felt like going to couples therapy. That's how it felt like where, I felt like I was at my lowest in my life, right? I think we might have talked about that last time. I didn't really want to go on anymore, that kind of thing. That was like the big disconnection from the spiritual, I think, for me. And then I think social too, you could think about, like, with your actual relationship and intimacy, right? With your wife or with your girlfriend, whoever. Those are at least the things I was thinking about with, like, porn. It seems like as we're talking about this rut concept, though, I think those are, like, really important things maybe to ask ourselves, right? Is, hey, if we are in this prolonged unproductive attitude, uh, like, what's being affected the most potentially? Is that a good way to look at it? Like, what kind of part, because it's going to affect everything, right? But does it help to, like, look at, like, hey, this is really affecting, like, if I'm drinking a lot or whatever and I'm not getting to sleep, like, is that more affecting, like, my physical state, like, primarily? Like, where is that? Does that is that like a good way of looking at it potentially if you're trying to identify, like, ways to attack it?
Potentially, and everyone will be different based on, like, the language you use for what makes sense to them, but considering contributing factors and again, you can't lie to your soul, so, we can make justifications. So let's use drinking, for example, and while I was never diagnosed or treated for alcoholism, without question, uh, always functional, did well in school, maintained social relationships, you name it, but I it coincidentally, we talked podcast earlier, I believe his name is Dr. Keith Humphreys.
Mm.
He's an addiction expert, I think out of Stanford, but he was on Andrew Huberman's podcast. I'll send it to you after we talk. Phenomenal discussions on various types of addictions. They unfortunately didn't talk about porn. I was interested because I knew that I listened to this week and a half ago. I knew we were going to talk, so I was interested to see if I had anything to take on that. But he was talking about um, addiction and how we use that term quite broadly these days. And as we should, like the pendulum swing, you give more awareness to something, more funding comes, more treatment options, more support, and that's great. But you look at the DSM 5 criteria for, there is no criteria for addiction. It's substance use disorders, or they've
Right.
now added behavior disorders. And so gambling's in there, and I think they allude to other things like potentially porn. I'm sure if they haven't done text revised in the next edition yet, that'll be involved just because of the epidemic that it is that we're seeing through the data. But it was very interesting because in use case disorders, they look at 11 different criteria. I'm not going to remember them, but think about the use of the substance or the behavior affecting relationships, affecting finances,
Mm.
catastrophic to your health, you name it. So based on how many criteria you meet is what gets you those 4 different, maybe 5 different classifications. And he said true addiction is that catastrophic, that severe level. So you go to like an AA meeting when it comes to alcohol and people are meeting criteria for like mild, it's they're not going to do this in the open, but it's laughable because it's you have a use disorder. And as you know, I always try to take empowering perspectives on anything when I can. And I really try to think about like what's the difference between an addiction and a bad habit. And that at
Mm.
least from a the diagnostic criteria is a way to kind of objectify it, but even subjectively, it's a great question to ask yourself. And Adam PT on Substack, one of my favorite
Gosh,
writers.
yeah, he's great. I
Uh,
love Adam.
so you talk about empowering writers when it comes to addiction, and he's up
Oh,
there
he's
with
great.
the tops of them, and he's big into choice theory. And without question, there are physiologic addictions that happen behaviorally or through substances, especially if you get involved in the developing years where your brain becomes wired around them for both coping, and sometimes just physically because of physiologic withdrawal. Your body, it can be dangerous to just quit
Right.
that addiction. But the empowering perspectives that you can have when is this just a behavior or use disorder that I have that really I have a lot more choice in this than I think I do. And therefore, if I have choice in it, what kind of choices am I willing to change right now? But again, all these considerations mean nothing if you're not actually going to follow up with subsequent action. So to your
Mm.
initial question, thinking about contributing factors rather than like if my girlfriend would do X, Y, and Z, even though I'm abusing alcohol, we can quickly find contributing factors for our ruts because of changes in our life circumstance when really it's how our actions within the life circumstance that we truly only have control over. So when you're defining ruts, yes, change your environment. But remember, wherever you go, whether it's vacation or somewhere
Mm.
else, you're bringing yourself with you. I make a joke in the military sometimes, like people will tell you about these shitty duty stations that they've been to, and it sounds like it's every one of them. And some places have a badder rap than others, but I've been to quote unquote and been stationed at some of the shittier locations in the Navy, and my goodness, did I love them. And so we make a joke that, of course, you didn't like that duty station. You brought yourself with you because it's really your perspective and then function within your environments. So Marcus Aurelius has this great quote about you can always like escape. I'm terrible with remembering quotes unless they're right in front of me, but the gist of it is you can basically go on mental vacation you want. No matter what's happening in front of you, you can always detach inside of yourself. So it's something related to that. He says it way more eloquently and beautifully than I do in meditations. But I like that idea that we can like strategically detach because again, the rumination, that unproductive attitude, sometimes recovery is just tabling something. If it's not urgent, if it's not life threatening, man, allow yourself that time to detach from it with your wake. And my goodness, if you are doing things that are compromising your sleep first and foremost. I don't care how positive, I don't care how productive your actions are, you're fucked. If you don't sleep
Mm.
well for long enough, we need sleep. And if you don't sleep long enough, you will literally die. So making sure if you know you're in a bad place to start prioritize the cliche big three, which is sleeping as best as you can, trying to clean up your eating as best you can, and get some movement in intentionally in a way that you know would be beneficial for you. And it doesn't mean go run a marathon. It means meet the level of your fitness and maybe push a little bit beyond that, or just go for a freaking long walk without a phone. So movement,
What was the second one you said?
nutrition. So thinking about just eating a little cleaner, drinking
Okay.
enough water, what you're putting in your body. Those three things are really going to influence your function. And then the third that you can add in, the social connection. So doing those first three, they're very beneficial for you, but just as beneficial for you, we are a social species, and having those support systems is imperative. And unfortunately, some people grew up maybe without the most supportive parents, maybe not the best home environment, maybe not a lot of friends, and that really is unfortunate.
Yep.
But if you are an adult now, the past is behind you, and again, all things are easier said than done. But we are lucky with all the drawbacks and the limitations of social media and the apps that are out there, which can be detrimental to your life. We are as connected as we've ever been.
Totally.
Substack communities have provided me way more support than I've ever written and provided to Substack. But even outside of the digital world, there are so many resources in most local communities, whether it's through churches, whether it's through jujitsu gyms or martial arts of some kind. Anything that you're potentially interested in, I bet there's a group for that. I bet you could seek something out and meet some like-minded individuals. So you have support systems that are kind of on the same page as you, and that is productive. That is something that will benefit your soul. So doing things for you selfishly so you can get yourself back on the right track, because you can't be selfless if you're not a little selfish for yourself, and getting good sleep, eating right, and moving a little bit. If somebody tells you you're being selfish for trying to knock those out in a reasonable way, that's not a great support system in your life. But having those support systems set up, which we talked about last time, when you know you've got people behind you, like you have with your brother, and I'm sure many other people in your life, sometimes that alone, just that perceived support, maybe you don't need to reach out, be like, you know what, if I'm in a bad place, I got someone behind me, and that produces you to persist a little bit further, maybe do the right thing because the reminders you've had, or you knowing you can go to them if you need help.
Yeah. Gosh, that was really great. It kind of brought up something funny, a funny example that I'll share, because it kind of brings in what you were talking about with sleep, diet, movement, social connection. So as I was sharing earlier in the podcast, right? Gosh, feel like I was in a rut. Post divorce, off and on. I think when I got divorced, maybe I was like 220, 230. I got all the way up to like I think 274 is the heaviest I weighed. And that was Um, and I don't know, like I'm a big guy. Like I'm not, I'm thick. Uh, but definitely like when I stepped on the scale, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is the heaviest I've ever weighed in my life. Happy to say I'm down 10 pounds since the new year. And I'll explain why in a minute, kind of linking in, what you were talking about, which I think will be an interesting example. But part of that too is like traveling on the road. I was like driving different states, stopping and going, that kind of thing. So that kind of threw me off for a little bit. And I would say too, yeah, like I just kind of felt like it was hard to kind of get things going. But I got back to Colorado I went all the way down to Florida, which was great because I did a bunch of deep sea fishing with one of my best friends on his fishing boat that he just bought. So that was a nice kind of mental jump starter for me because that was right after kind of like my breakup. But anyways, got back from Colorado, went elk hunting with my pops, and then I just remember committing with my brother. I said, "Hey, I'm gonna just start going to the gym. Like nothing crazy. I'm just gonna try to get in the gym at least 3 to 4 times a week." And then I started to find because I was boxing a little bit before I left with a group of guys actually, which is pretty cool. My gym's got a heavy bag, and I always look at it, and if it's open, I like look at the treadmills, I look at the heavy bag, and I'm like, I'm gonna go hit the heavy bag. Like I don't want to just like run in a spot for like 20 minutes. I'd rather just like hit a bag. So it was kind of like one of those things to where I just started to go in. And I remembered what James Clear, I think, said in his book was just like, someone struggling to go in the gym, just like say, hey, I'm going to go to the gym for like 1 minute, or I'm going to go to the gym for like 10 minutes. Like you went, like that's the goal is you went to the gym and then eventually it builds up. So kind of leading into what I was saying was I started to do that. And then I also started to have a better nighttime schedule to where I was committed to just like, hey, I'm going to be off my phone like close like 30 minutes to an hour before I go to bed. I'm going to put my phone arm's length away from me. Because what was happening, I think, was I was stressed out. I was kind of like having this existential, post divorce, like, where am I at with life? Like, what am I doing? I was kind of like rethinking all these things. And I think part of it is when you get that stressed out in this modern world, like you just like your phone is just like you're just on it and you're just looking at things. And you're on Substack. Like we're both like trying to grow our platforms, trying to grow our influence. So our word gets out to people. So then you're always kind of like checking those things. Like I find myself sometimes like maybe it's like that impulse or whatever. Like the trigger is like go and just like look at a notification or whatever, but I felt like I was doing that too much. So then I started to detach from that. And then the workouts, right? I started to feel better, started to sleep better, started to eat better. So all these things are starting to work together, right? These past few weeks. And then I would say for social connection, kind of building it all in was my dad's cousin. He plays basketball every Saturday at 7 in the morning. And I've played with him a few times. The last time I played with him was 8 years ago. And I think I was saying earlier on the podcast that, my dad played college basketball. Like I basically grew up, my dad, before church would hold me up to the rim, the 10-foot rim, and I'd hang on it as long as I could. And my dad would have to tickle me to get me off the rim because I just loved, I'd watched Michael Jordan, like big, like Dominique Wilkins. Like I just loved dunking. One time in our basement was unfinished. My dad actually put like a plywood with a real basketball rim and he nailed it to like the staircase. And we had like this little basketball court. And he was in the other room watching a Bulls game, and I did like a tomahawk dunk on it, and I ripped the whole thing off the wall, and I was laying with the rim on my chest. Wanted to say that it was like basketball has just always been like I've always loved playing it. Like it was always like my best sport that I just love to play like naturally all that stuff. Well, it's been 8 years since I've played, and I think part of that was just life kind of got busy. My ex and I we moved an hour and a half away from kind of where my friend group was. So with all that being said, I think basketball has just like kind of been this like rut in my head of like, hey, like I really should play this again because I love it, and it's a social thing. It's like I don't really have any other competitive parts of my life, honestly. Like I used to be such a competitive person. And then it's like, I started to do a lot of yoga and that's not really like super competitive, but it's great. I love yoga. But it's like I need to get like that dog back in me and like, like get out some of this energy and do something physical, competitive, right? So basically I kind of kept telling myself, like you gotta wait until you lose some weight or whatever. I just decided I saw my it was at Christmas. I was talking to him. I was like, Chip, you still playing basketball? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, hey, like mind if I like, text you about it? Like if you're available next week, like can you like is it okay? Like by playing? He's like, well, it's invite only. Let me ask the guys. And then he texts me back. He's like, hey, like you're in if you want to play. So tomorrow will be my fourth week in a row playing basketball. And man, I'm out of shape still. Like basketball shape is like, probably like BJJ with wrestling, like it's just a different thing. Like you're constantly moving and jumping and doing all this stuff. But I'm just proud of myself for getting in there, and I just, it's a long winded example. But to me, it was kind of like this big, like mental, like, hey, like I did it. I went out there and I did it and it changed like my attitude to where it's like, hey, this thing that you've been like kind of thinking about for 8 years, that, you love to do for your whole life, this passion of yours, and now you did it again, like it's kind of like breaking through it. So I just wanted to share that. It could be anything for anybody listening right now, like whatever that is, if it's something that's positive that you love and you just been putting it off. I think like you nailed it earlier when you were just talking about like you just got to activate,
You said so
you
many
know?
good things there. I'm gonna try to remember a few of
Yeah.
them to speak on them. Um, you mentioned like some good excuses that people will, they're not good excuses, but some excuses that people will
Yeah.
make to not go back to basketball because you're out of shape. And so many people tell me, and it's very common, like, oh, I'm going to start training mixed martial arts or jujitsu as soon as I get in shape. Like, that's a terrible idea. Like, you wait till you get in shape, then you're going to be even more humiliated because no matter how great a shape you're in, you're going to be humbled when you first start. And it was the same year, and it was after I set that burpee world record, back in 2021, when
Mm.
I got it.
Can you elaborate on that real quick? Casual drop of the world
Uh,
record burpees.
so I was in really good shape. So I set a Guinness World Record, for as many chest to ground burpees as you can do in 3 minutes back and during COVID. Couldn't train. This is I just got my purple belt. Came from Guam to Southern Maryland. Couldn't go to any gyms. Didn't have any close friends where we could still go to the gyms, even though they technically were close, which was happening all over the place for people that were friends and the loop with others. But so no, I was brand new to this city, didn't know anybody, so I was training a lot at home. Was doing a lot of stuff like trying to train my mind in certain ways, but definitely needed to move my body and learned about this Guinness challenge from a buddy and took it on. Was able to get that back. It's since been beaten, but the point
How
was
many?
I
Sorry, real
did.
quick.
Oh, you're good. It ended up being at that time 71, and then it got beaten, and then I got 75, but it's been beaten since then.
Dang. Okay, that's super impressive. Sorry to interrupt,
Thank you.
but that's
Thank you.
cool.
So my tangent, the point was I was in very good shape. And not only was I doing burpees, I was doing strength training, endurance. I was in good shape. Still in good shape. Wouldn't be ready the burpee world record, but maybe we'll try to attack some other ones later. I went and played basketball with my brother-in-law, and my best sport in high school was basketball too. I didn't start training mixed martial arts and jiu-jitsu until I was 30 years old. Basketball is my sport. I actually was more recognized in football, but I was better in basketball. That was my passion. Love that. So I went and played with my brother-in-law and his friends. And while I kept up and did fine, I was so smoked after that 1 hour of playing with these guys. And it's just casual games. And so,
Sure.
and every even though I had adaptations from my previous life playing in high school and continue to play intramurals in college, and in really good shape, you're gonna struggle when you do something new. And heck
Mm.
yeah, that's the way that you should go at it. And another thing that you said that you were telling yourself, I should get back involved with basketball. Like, I have this itch in my soul. This is something I love. Why am I not doing it? You heard those excuses. You said, fuck it. You did it anyways. That word should. So when I was in Guam, I can't remember
Mm.
if we talked about this in the first
Yeah,
podcast.
do it again though. That was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I joined the leadership team of the stress management program, and it was full of mental health professionals, social workers, psychologists, and one of them became a good buddy. And something he would use this example in class about different mentalities that are counterproductive to your functions, like all or nothing thinking, catastrophic thinking, and then should statements was one that he usually ended with. And he was like, "Quit shoulding all over yourself." And that stuck with me because I love you. You've heard me already. I like cussing. I think it's funny. I love humor. So that stuck with me. But the word should is an indicator. It is something calling inside yourself. Either you should do that thing right now and start doing it and be willing to struggle with it, or quit lying to
Mhm.
yourself. You don't want to do that thing. So don't even say that. Don't lie to yourself because all you're doing is hurting your soul and yourself more because you truly can't lie to yourself. So I still say should all the time, but if I hear myself, that is now a trigger word. Not to where I become triggered and emotional, but I trigger a response to myself. Like, oh, I just heard myself say that. Don't care what my fear is around it. Don't care what's happening. I'm going to tackle that in some manageable way that I can because something's calling to me that that's an action I need to partake in at least a certain way, or it needs to be reframed in a way that I'm being genuine with myself, being true with myself, that makes sense for wherever that word came from. So that should
Mm.
statement that you said earlier, and then you did that thing, and that's helping you feel good. The last thing that you mentioned was as you started moving more, you started going to the gym and probably curating your environment to make sometimes it's the logistics of doing that delayed gratification task. It's just showing up. Like you said, James Clear mentioned the 1 minute or the 10-minute rule. I like to hang on that 10-minute rule. And sometimes it's just like having a good warm up. I have the exact same warm up routine before I train, before I compete, before I know I'm about to do anything physical. Takes about 5, maybe 10 minutes if I add in some certain stretches because it's jujitsu, but usually about 5 minutes. It involves a lot of jumping jacks, different variations of them. So there's some activation there from plyometrics, jump around, nervous system activation. There's definitely different movements to loosen up particular joints all around your body, but it's really just getting your blood pumping. And
Mm,
if I get through that, usually I'm good to go. But
mm.
if so, I every day I train every day to some capacity, and excuses come to me like they do anyone else. Like I don't feel like doing this shit today. And I've tried some of the biometric wearables in the past, but I got to the point where I don't give a shit what my recovery score is. I know whether or not I can do it, and if I need to modify or dial it back, I can still do something. Like don't tell me I need to rest. You don't fucking know me, machine. I'm gonna figure something out. And and then of course I feel better after I do it. I have never completed a workout. I'm like, "Ah, I wish I didn't do that. Never, never.
Oh, that's such a good point.
Yeah. So delay gratification for sure. But man, have there been days where I have started a workout like this isn't the right way? I still feel like shit 10 minutes in. I'm not doing this. I'm not going about it in this way with this intensity, or maybe I'm going to pivot and do something else. Or yeah, maybe just do some of the cool recovery things that are out there, like a sauna, and challenge myself in a different way, or go read a book. Like you can still challenge your body and move your mind, even if you're resting your body. Like we don't need to shut off and uh, like be- become a vegetable in front of a screen, and that's recovery. Like no, like earn your rest for sure. Do that. There's a lot of cool things. I obviously like social media, Substack. I'm on Substack reading all the time, and while you could argue that there's a lot of productive things to read on there, yeah,
Sure.
you can watch your shows, you can do all kinds of whatever it is. But man, if you're not tackling those tasks that you know are productive for you, especially in the way that you mentioned that you felt like you should be doing it, don't eat a big pile of should. Go ahead and do that thing. And so, whether it's movement, whether it's mental, whether it's emotional, social, spiritual, listen to yourself. Your soul's not lying. You can't lie to your soul, and your soul's not lying to you. Tackle those things that you know could be productive for you. And then you become a little bit more conscious throughout your day. We've been talking ruts a little bit here and there. And
Yeah.
and I know when I'm struggling, I'm in a rut, I go more autopilot. I kind of shut down emotionally. I keep functioning, but I'm not the fun loving, cussing guy that's doing it for entertainment. I don't cuss in front of my kids, but in front of my wife, the tone of my voice changes. I'm gonna get shit done, but I'm just functioning on autopilot, and my wife can recognize it. I'm getting better at recognizing it myself. Um, but I'm not living as consciously. I'm just kind of subconsciously going through the motions of shit
Mm,
that I know I need to get done around the house, the obligations, or even at work. When I get into ruts because I'm doing a lot of tasks in my new role that I'm not a big fan of, that are not my skill sets, but I know they're important for the strategic vision and mission of my department, so I do them. But when I can break them down, reframe them, and change my perspective on them, it helps me quite a bit. But adding conscious intentionality to my actions, if I'm just operating passively, I'm definitely not operating in my capacity. So, and you mentioned you start adding conscious intention to your physical activity. Hey, go figure. You start eating a little bit more consciously. You start trying to sleep a little bit better because these concepts overlap. When you start doing things for yourself and adding, again, I'm saying the word very intentionally, conscious consciousness to when you're awake, you're gonna perform a lot better. I really try to check myself if I notice attitude, perspective, or just subconscious autopilot function. Those are big symptoms for me that, hey, take a little strategic detach, think about what's contributing to this, and then man the fuck up and focus on a task that you can handle. Talk to your wife, talk to your boss, or your colleagues, let them know where you're at. And if there are the opportunities that you can't manage yourself, what can be done? Because I've gotten to a point now where those people in my life know I'm in a good place, or at least coming from a good place even when I'm in a bad place. But if I can articulate that, which I'm old enough where I have some pride, I'm too proud in that way where
right.
I'll just suppress. I got this. I'm good. And there's a place for that for sure, particularly if there are threats or issues that we need to deal with right here and now. But if it is not an urgent matter that's going to impact your safety or the safety of your loved ones, it's okay to slow down a little bit and think about how can I shift my state a little bit. Most importantly, after you think about perspective change, subsequent action change.
Mm, well said. Well said. And I think for me too, like when I look back at the rut that I was in, uh, I think I have ADHD. I think I don't know if I was like clinically diagnosed, but I know like my Christian therapist was like, yeah, I think you have ADHD. But
That's it,
I
overdone.
think yeah, that's why I'm like, but I think for me, like, I get kind of scatterbrained, and I think I tagged you on a Substack note. That was this. I'll have to put it I'll probably put it in the description after we're done because I thought it was such a nice illustration of just like how I was feeling, like kind of post divorce. I'm trying to look it up right now. I thought I made a post of it. Oh, there it is. Okay. I just wanted to give this guy credit while we're talking. His name's Grant Snyder. He draws illustrate. He's got like a pretty big Substack, but I just thought it was so good. It just had this. I'll just kind of read out what it was, but it was like it's called Unfocused. I don't think you can screen share right now on Substack, which maybe that should be something in the future. Would be kind of nice. But basically, it's this kind of animation. This guy I woke up out of focus. My ambition was lacking. My sense of purpose had been erased. So for me, that connected automatically because I think my sense of purpose was being married and getting a house and building this career and maybe a family down the road, and then hey, divorce. So it's like, what's my sense of purpose? So basically, woke up out of focus, ambition was lacking, my sense of purpose had been erased, the future looked blurry, my attention split into pieces. That to me really resonated because I think in my rut, I think my attention was just scattered through so many different places to where I wasn't like fully giving attention to one thing. Like, I was talking, I was in a relationship. So I was like putting a lot of attention into that, which was great. It was very healing in a lot of ways. But I wasn't putting in any attention into like my physical health, really. Wasn't getting good sleep. My routine was all over the place. Spiritual life, a little bit all over the place too. So I think those are things where my intention was split into pieces. And then there's a few next part that says it nearly dissolved to nothing. So that's kind of how I felt. I think like leading up to like kind of the split of my relationship, I just felt like so much pressure. Like just it was almost like hard to like hear anything. It was just kind of like just so many things coming in. And then the last part is I had to reconstruct my sense of meaning. And I just really love that because I think that reconstruction phase in a way. I think that's a part of the rut too, is like we're constantly, I think, building ourselves, right? Like we're constantly, all of us, right? Like we're constantly building ourselves up. There's gonna be things that are gonna like chip away that we're gonna have to fix. There might be like a remodel that we might have to do where it's like, hey, like that part of my life, maybe, like I think for me, sometimes I was so connected to my past marriage where I was ruminating on it so much. It's like, hey, like that part of your life's done. Like there's green fields ahead on what you want to do. But that can be tough, I think, sometimes when we're stuck in that mental state, right? Where it's just unproductive. It's like you're thinking about it, but it's like, where are we going with this? And that's just kind of where I was at. So I just want to link that in there because I think to what you were saying too, and what we were talking about a little bit with the physical health and stuff, it's almost like it's connecting it to a bigger purpose. So I think like with basketball, it's like, well, I want to like get like tonight. I got to wake up at like 6 in the morning, right, to go play at 7. So I know like when we're done talking, I'm not really going to spend so much time doing extra things. Like I'm going to be like, okay, well, I got to get in bed by 8:39. I got to go to sleep because I want to be able to play basketball in the morning and feel rested. I'm not going to eat anything either. I don't want to, I'm trying to lose some weight. So it's kind of like, it's almost like these subsequent actions that we're taking. It's like leading into that, maybe our goals or where we want our identity to be. And it's like, once we start building that consistency up, then it's like, okay, like this is where I'm going now. Like I'm getting after my fitness. Like I'm going after it. And these are the things that are going to help uh, fuel me to keep going that way. Hopefully that made sense, but that's kind of where my mind was going as we were talking about it.
Yeah, our thoughts, really our thought interpretations and subsequent actions are continuously contributing to building us up or improving ourselves or breaking us down and destroying ourselves. Now, don't get me wrong. Like time is undefeated, death is undefeated. And as you
Right.
get to advanced ages, Most people start slowing down unless their name is Marshall Peterson, Substack reader. He's 78 years old. He can deadlift 450 pounds and do all these
What?
amazing physical feats. Mountain skier. He's
Write that down.
he's incredible. But even he is slowing down in some ways compared to what he used to do because guess what? He can do that thing because he's been doing it a long time. But he's still as curious as somebody who is our age, in their 30s, that's coming into their adulthood and trying to see what they can learn, what they can do, who they can connect with, and how they can grow as an individual with what they truly have control of because you can't control when that day comes for whatever that may be that you're no longer on this planet. But man, you can do a lot with what you have right now. And oftentimes, those things are quite simple. They're just not easy for changing
Mm.
the atomic habits that you may have ingrained in yourself because of what you experienced as a child, what you've intentionally uh, justified as an excusable behavior or substance for long enough. And even addiction aside, just certain functions that if you are genuine with yourself and you reflect on it, you know it's not right for you. You know you should be doing something different. And absolutely, so that cartoon that you had mentioned, where it has the very empowering words in it from that Substack account, yeah, it's powerful stuff because you recognize that what you're doing is not contributing well to your fulfillment, and you have to find your own meaning. And that is going to that's going to result from shifting not only your perspectives but your function within your environment and what you truly have control over.
Yeah, it's almost too like if you're going to take the example as well, like we're on Substack, the cool thing about Substack, like everyone listening right now is like pretty much everyone listening probably has like a publication that you're working on and, you're writing, all that stuff. I think about that too when it comes to being in a rut potentially is hey, maybe you're not getting the attention that you thought you'd get on something that you wrote. Maybe it's always something that you spent like a million years working on. It's like your grand masterpiece. You posted, and it's like you get like a few likes or something, right? And then you post like a note about like a dog, typing on a typewriter. You pick up like 100 subscribers or something. It's funny. I picked up a ton of subscribers one time just posting this video about it was like an old Sears commercial that we went over in my recovery group about guys being in the doghouse. And I think it was like maybe it was like for like jewelry or something at the end, but it was like a hilarious video. But like that got me more subscribers on Substack than pretty much anything else, which is kind of crazy, just in one instance. But I guess where I'm going with this is I think like you're saying a lot with like the perception, right? Is the attitude that we have is, we're looking, and I think that's a big thing on social media, right? And even in the real world too, it's like constantly like we're comparing ourselves to others, right? And I think it was Teddy Roosevelt that said, comparison is the thief of joy. And I think that goes into being in a rut too, is like we do this. I do it a lot too. It's almost like your attitude is focused on something that, you know, instead of focusing on, how many people are going to look at this or, hey, I post something on YouTube, like how many impressions is it going to go viral? It should be more of like, hey, like let me write something that I really care about, or hey, let me do this talk with Kyle that I think is going to be awesome for everyone listening. And it's like a shift of where my focus is instead of these other things that are maybe more, maybe they'll come with time, right? Like the growth, and I think that's what everyone kind of wants in a way. Probably on Substack is like, hey, I want to be a big writer, I want to be a big podcaster, which is not like wrong by any thing, but I think it's kind of like you can get stuck in that rut if you're focusing too much on that, right? Or like if you're in the Brazilian jiu-jitsu gym and you see this grand sensei walk in, and if your attitude's bad, it's like, oh gosh, like how am I ever going to be that good? Versus like, hey, like this is where I'm at right now. This is what I can learn from getting handled by this dude because he's like a world class guy, and having like the humility, but also like the attitude of, hey, I'm gonna like learn from this. And here's some things I can pick up. So there was just some thoughts there on that.
Yeah, I check Substack metrics just like the next guy.
Yeah.
But I've thankfully I posted and ghosted for about 8 months because I'm not. My wife is a 10 times better writer than I am, so I would always write through obligation in school. So if I had a project, I swallowed that piece of should, and I wrote the paper. Didn't want to do
Yeah.
it. Got the marks that I needed, but man, I just did not enjoy writing as a kid. I loved reading. Did not. I always admire writers throughout my life, but never have I ever until recently thought I would like write in public on purpose for fun. So I started journaling, sharing it with my wife, reading her journal entries and being in awe of how good of a writer she is. And then when I wrote those few articles, thought about just repurposing some of my journal entries, but I zero likes other than my mother for 8 months. And that helped me get really one, find a writing style that I'm still evolving because I haven't been doing
Right.
this that long. But thankfully I was old enough where doing this, be cautious of those sources of external validation is my point. And
Mm.
while I like getting a lot of likes, I like the engagement like anyone else. I'm talking to you tonight, not for anything strategic to help my Substack account. I'm talking to you because I like you. I had a great conversation the first time. I enjoy when we text. You're a good dude, and it's beneficial every time we talk. So if it's not authentic to you, if you're not getting that source of internal validation, there is no amount of external validation that will help you. Now, don't get me wrong. Some people work in SEO or whatever, and their job are these metrics. But
Right.
hopefully, I don't work in that field, so I don't know, but I would imagine that there are a lot of good people in that field that can separate the mission of the job from the true validation of their efforts behind it, regardless of how it goes. And so that's a job versus a calling, if you will, and hopefully they find other buckets to fulfill that, or maybe it is a calling and they have a different perspective on it that serves them, and that's fine. They get after it in competitive spirit. But I actually recently wrote a piece on the importance of external validation, but not
Mm.
when it comes to that what we think about in today's social media age, or like so when it comes to likes, viral, all that shit. It's so if you got 1,000 subscribers, but your brother told you you're a liar, that post is not who you are. What's more important? Or if
Oh, the
everyone
brother.
crapped on a post and your brother were to say, That post changed my life. You made me a better man." Like, it's cool to get acknowledged in quantity or from certain types of individuals. But man, we all have these networks and these support systems. And if you don't know who you are, that's the biggest job that you have is to figure out what that calling is, what your soul is telling you to be whoever it is that you're trying to be in this world and get after it when you do it. And it is an evolving thing. But making sure your actions definitely align with your intended perspectives in a way
Mm.
that doesn't keep you in a rut. That's a challenging thing to do, particularly when you have adversities as a child or issues with behaviors and substances. That's very challenging to do. But when you do have those support systems that you respect and are credible and you value, leverage them, because I don't care how altruistic I am and how virtuous I'm trying to act and doing all these things that I think align with our values. If my wife is telling me I'm fucking up, no matter how well intended I am. What's the quote? Like the pathway to hell is paved with good intentions. So you can be well intended, but if your actions are not aligning with the intended consequences or action or outcomes of those actions, particularly if it's in support of anything other than yourself,
Mm.
then you're not then you're off the mark, and you need to take a step back and do some reflection that's going to be challenging so you can change your approach to what your intentions truly are, or realize that you were lying and your intentions are something different and be honest about that. Very challenging things, but very beneficial when you can course correct authentically so you can be the best version of yourself without lying to your soul.
Mm. Yeah, as you were talking, I was kind of thinking about it too. Was you again? I'm going to say this, and I said this at the beginning of the podcast, but I've been writing notes, so you know, take some notes if you haven't already.
Appreciate
And
it.
like we were talking about earlier, hey, if it's a podcast, so you can always re-listen to it. I know I'm gonna re-listen to this one a few times because when you go, man, like it's great. And I want to say too, I love talking with you. It's always good. I was so excited to have you on, especially when I messaged you. I felt like just excited to say, hey, man, I felt like I've been in a rut, but I'm turning a corner. I like wanted to let you know that because I think I think that's important too. With brotherhood and having each other's backs was supportive that way. But as you were talking, something I was thinking about too, I think sometimes in this definition, which I'm going to restate again, is the definition that you stated with a rut is a prolonged, unproductive attitude. Something interesting too, what I was thinking about was, and this is like in my personal life, was I mean, I just felt like I wasn't like doing that good like with work or, it's almost like you have this attitude of like you're not you are like really hard on yourself, or you're just saying like, I'm not really getting anywhere with life. Or one time I had this talk with my therapist. We were talking about my job, and I was just kind of talking about like my purpose. I'm like, I don't know, like is this like me, like my passion thing or whatever? And he's kind of like, well, look at like what you're doing within your job that is building these qualities up that you really align with, and it's the attitude, right? It's like how you're looking at it. So I guess what I wanted to say was, when you're in that rut, it's the mindset where you're still you might still be doing like really productive things, right? Like, I look back at last year, I did some like really productive stuff with work. I just like really wasn't giving myself, like, I didn't want to give myself credit for it. And we were talking about validation. I think when we're in that rut too, with because we're in that attitude, which I keep coming back to that word because I think you really nailed it. It's like an attitude. Is someone might say, "Hey, like Kyle, like great job with this," right? But when you're in that rut, it's kind of like, okay, I get in that issue too. It's like, I think with recovery too, and that's what we talk about in this podcast, right? With porn, or I know some other people. I saw some familiar faces. It could be with like alcohol, could be other things, right? That we write about, we talk about, that we're going through in our lives. I think that's something too that we got to give ourselves credit, right? Like, I talked about the relapse that I had. That was back in the summer. I wrote about it, I spoke about it. That was like tough for me. Made me like, I didn't really. It was like, man, like this can be so hard to talk about. I don't really want to talk about it, right? But it was like that attitude I was in, and then flipping the switch is saying, dude, like, look at like the 20 plus years of your life where you were incredibly addicted to this thing. It's like you couldn't stop. And then you look at the last years of your life and just how many relapses you've had compared to that. It's like crazy to think about, or the amount of relapses I've had. What, like in a 3 year period? It's like I could count it on my hand.
Yep.
You know, and comparing that to like previous times in my life, it's I don't even know like how I could count it up. You know, I think it's thinking about that too. It's the perspective of the attitude that you're going to have, to where in those moments you feel like, man, like I suck, or like how could I go back to that thing, or I made that mistake again. But I think that's the unproductive part, is when you flip the switch and you flip it to say, hey, yeah, I messed up, or I made this mistake, or I'm not quite where I want to be. But then you have the perspective of, well, look how far I've come, and look how far I will go if I keep doing the things that got me like here in the first place. So I think
Yeah.
sometimes, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, so you highlighted something important, that when you're in a rough spot, the the validation, it's going to be like there is no external validation most likely that's going to help you out of a rut. Like you're not going to hear it in the same way, no matter if it is like true or not. And even internal validation could be challenging based on your current function. But I like how you said, "Look how far you've come," um, and that's legit. But you're probably struggling, at least in one of those buckets that we talked about: spiritually, mentally, physically, socially. And this brings me to one of my favorite things I love writing about, which is intentional stress. Give yourself some data to validate what you're looking for, maybe in a different bucket, or the one you're struggling in. If it is just trying to abstain from porn or from something else, like that's a time thing. That's forever. And there's no amount of minutes after a certain amount of time, like without question, you should be proud of that. But like, what else can you do to add to your productive function rather than just trying not to do it? What can you do instead of it?
Totally.
Like, I wrote another piece a while ago, like, don't quit your bad habits. So when you have a bad habit, don't quit it, replace it. Replace it with other things that you're proud of. Find new things that make it so hard to do that bad habit because you're so passionate about other things. Because clearly you don't like the bad habit. You want to quit it. But if you just focus on that and only that, it's going to be really tough because it's still in your psyche all the time. Even if you're hating on it's still there. And you think about it long enough, you might fall back into it. But if you replace it with other things, create new skills and new things you're passionate about. So that's why pursuing stress on purpose at a manageable level so you can train the skill that is resilience. And again, I define resilience as the ability to effectively manage and eventually recover from stress. So whether that is physically, whether that is mentally, whether that is socially and or spiritually, and there are some that cover all four. Usually they're going to be physical in nature because you can't fill the physical bucket if you're not doing something physical, which is why I write most often on different ways to pursue physical training, not necessarily for the benefit of adaptations to your muscles or your speed or anything else that comes from physical exercise, which is beneficial, but for your
Right.
resilience, do a hard thing on purpose and then recover from it. But we can definitely do this mentally in a lot of challenging ways. We can pursue hard conversations on purpose. We can talk in public. We can write in public. We can do a lot of things that we're a little fearful of to do the social challenge and spiritual. There's so many things too. Reflective exercises, digging deep into what our fears are, our biggest failures are, and the lessons from them, having those conversations then with people you care about. There are so many ways to challenge yourself. And then when you manage it and then recover from it and maybe even accomplish what you set out to do, some challenge that you're a little cautious of that you don't know if you can do. Michael Easter writes on Masogi's quite a bit. And I love that concept where there's a 50% chance of failure. You're not sure if you can complete this workout or this long ruck, or you're not even sure if you can complete this 30-minute podcast in public or presentation in front of a room on a topic that you're passionate about, but you're scared. I used to be more scared of talking in public than I was of dying.
Mm.
I was one of those guys. I almost fainted in front of my junior high class. All my good friends in the class, just unprepared, got called up, went up there shaking. The room started going dark, kind of slipped. Teacher sat me down, dropped me a letter grade. Let me go again next week where I have my notes and just read them because I stayed scared of talking in public until grad school. And even then I wasn't comfortable. But then reps, reps, reps. The more I do it, the better you get, like anything else. But pursuing stress on purpose makes things that are initially uncomfortable a little bit easier to manage. And then before you know it, you can do things a year later. And that's your warm up now, where you avoided them initially and you couldn't accomplish them at all, even with modifications. We can
Mm.
adapt in so many ways. Plasticity is possible throughout the lifespan. Without question, our environment and our developing systems and brains when we're children, we're very prone to plasticity. But everything is curated to encourage that. We can do that in ourselves. It's never too late. As it's not too late is what my friend Gwendolyn Bounds, who also writes on Substack, it's the name of her account, and she has a phenomenal book out there called "Not Too Late." When
Hmm.
already a successful journalist for the Wall Street Journal, by every metric you can imagine, v- doing very well in life. She heard somebody at a dinner party ask a young kid what do they want to be when they grow up. For whatever reason, that resonated. She didn't feel like she had been fulfilled in the way that she wanted to through her career and what she had done personally, even though, again, had a different book already. I'm sorry, did not. I don't know if she had that her first amazing book too called Little Chapel on the River. Another amazing read. Either way, she looked up what is the hardest things people can do, and for whatever reason, the algorithm fed her
Uh-oh.
Spartan course racing. And so she started doing Spartan races. And 5 years later, she's one of the best in the world for her age category. And she still
What?
does it every year. I'm going to try to get together with this year to do a race. But it's just amazing when we listen to our soul and what it's saying, what's calling us, particularly maybe in a different bucket where we're not as successful as our careers, as our relationships, as our fitness, as our chosen intellect, our curiosity in this world. There's always ways to improve. And the only way to improve is to pursue struggle and stress on purpose, willing to be a beginner and struggle for a while so you can progressively cause adaptations in whatever you're getting after to progressively improve over time.
Oh, it's funny you mentioned that because I've always wanted to learn how to, and I'm not going to play it right now because I just started, but I've always like wanted to play an instrument.
Yeah.
So I got a little harmonica.
Okay.
Uh, so that's something that I'm working. My dog just was like, I'm getting out of here. That's the one thing we have to figure out traveling is like they do not like the harmonica. but the funny thing is that yeah, I got a keyboard too last year, and I like barely even touched it. So that's something that I'm thinking about too. Is like all those thoughts go in my head. Is like, hey, like I've always wanted to try this. Like I'm getting more creative. Yeah, I like to write. You know, I like to put like my passions down and like be creative about it, different perspectives. And yeah, it's just like this year, I'm like, hey, just do it. You know, just do it, try it. You're not going to be the best at it, obviously, but you're not going to get good at it unless you do it. Just like basketball, like right. I kind of I think some of the guys gave me some crap. I was like, yeah, I just gotta get in basketball shape, and I'm like, I'm only gonna get in that like by playing basketball. And one of the older guys is like, he's like, I've never been in basketball shape. He's like, what are you talking about? He's like, it always kicks my butt, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but I think, like you said, man, I think that's like for anything really when we think about it. Um, and I think sometimes like we can get in those ruts. I think too when we're like there's that conflict within us, right? Where we're just really like, like, you know, like I'm not really doing like what I want to do and it's kind of like you can only get to that place, you know, if you start chipping away at it with something that's manageable, you know, something that you can do. It's not like it's going to be something that's going to take like the whole day, you
Yeah.
know, like something that you can kind of start doing consistently, you know, whatever it is. I think that makes a lot of sense.
It's important that you said it like that too, because life's going to ask us to do a lot of things that we don't want to do. And it's important to do hard things, even if you don't want to do them, whether it's for your job, for your family, for
Right.
you name it, for service to this world and being a good person. Sometimes it requires embracing the suck and getting better at doing things you don't want to do is a great skill to learn. But that doesn't mean you do everything you don't want to do all the time. You're just a sacrificial lamb. Finding those pockets where you actually do what you want to do, whether it's at work, at home, on your breaks, early morning, late night, whatever makes sense for you. And it doesn't take, that's why I do the daily challenge. It's always going to be less than 10 minutes. It's going to be in some most likely physical capacity. Sometimes we do like this month is just sitting upright. Um, Ideally on the floor, but just really engaging your back muscles without slouching over, because we're so prone to that these days. And as I'm sitting here, I'm using this stupid backrest of my chair.
You gotta
We
sit
wouldn't have
up.
backrests if we gave a crap about our posterior chain and core muscles in this country. But I'm joking. Backrests are cool. But I try not to use them. This month even is add more like just awareness. Like I feel a backrest. Even when I'm in my car now, I'm just like, get off that thing. You don't need to use that. Engage your core a little bit. Sit up straight. Engage your posterior chain. You're fine. If it feels good. And is my back a little bit sore than usual because I'm doing that on top of everything else I do? Sure. But 5-10 minutes a day not only can cause physical adaptations to your body if it is related to movement, but it adds more conscious intention to all those other things that
Mm,
you're doing, like you found with physical movement. And yeah, pursuing those challenges for yourself on purpose in ways that you want to improve in your life, man, that's self care. All these other things out there, a lot of them are bullshit. Like, you can't. There is no secret that you can just will into your life through thinking about it. Don't get me wrong. Positivity, reframing. I love that stuff. Means nothing without subsequent action behind it, and truly getting after the ways that matter to you. Um, so definitely pursue those things. And I challenge you, by the way, for this coming year to find like 30 minutes a week or even 10 minutes a week to practice, whether it's the keyboard and or the harmonica, and whether it's to make a little end to your podcast, a little outgoing or incoming music. I think Lex Freeman does that. So one of my favorite podcasts, Lex Freeman, but I believe it's him playing the guitar and that beautiful melody.
yeah, no, that's cool.
Yeah, I bet you could do that, and I bet you can get pretty proficient in either one of those instruments to create a little melody that you like yourself, or maybe that it's similar to a song that you love. Yeah, I'm about to say should. I don't think I should start playing the piano again because there's so many other things that I prioritize over that. But I really enjoyed developing that skill when our landlord sold us their baby grand piano in Guam, and we flew that thing here. We still have it. My daughter's taking piano lessons now, and
No kidding.
I have a cool app that taught me how to do it. And man, you talk about flow. I am not good. And I need the damn app because my melody and rhythm's so off. Like I can't do sheet music, but when I follow the thing on the app, I've played some of my favorite songs and just man, it's a flow state unlike what I experience on the mats or unlike when I experience in certain um, domains of fitness. It's just a really cool thing on how music activates both areas of your brain,
Mm,
especially when you're producing yourself. I I envy a lot of people just because I look up to and I love when people are passionate about what they do. I'm very passionate about what I do, but music is a special thing, and people that produce it in all the various ways you can, it's a really cool skill to work on. Again, challenging initially, but very fulfilling, even when you reach a very basic level of copy, which is what I have, if you even call it that in piano.
All right, well, I'm gonna take you up. It's recorded, it's in the ether, there's accountability here. Um, that kinda made me think too, and I know we've been going through a ton of concepts. We're about an hour and a half, so, we could probably talk for 10 hours, if we wanted to, but we don't have to do that tonight. So we could probably get close to landing the plane because I think we talked a lot of through a ton of great concepts. Because I think it's like we could talk about all these things, but I think what we're talking about is simple. It's not simple in a way to where it's not going to feel like it's simple, but I think it's what I've found, at least getting out of my rut. It really was focusing on the simple things and not just focusing on it, but like actually like doing the simple things and like doing them consistently. Um, One thing I wanted to add into that though, as you were talking was, so when we do like recovery, right? One of the things, right, that is a daily thing, like I was saying earlier, is I do accountability with my little brother. So we follow, it's like called the fast check-in. So it's basically like that's an acronym for how you're feeling today, what your activities in recovery are, sobriety, like checking in, like where you're at. We normally use green, yellow, red. So green's like you're doing well. Yellow is like, hey, I'm shaky. Red, I'm relapsed. And then there's two T's. The first T is threats to your sobriety. So that all of last year pretty much was I'm not getting a lot of sleep. I'm on my phone too much. I was like a broken record. My recovery coach often, it was kind of like a running joke for a while because he's like, hey, like, how was your sleep? And I'm just like, wasn't that great? And it was like, well, no kidding. Like Einstein, while I was feeling I was in a rut. So that's first T. And then the second T, it's tools. So like what tools am I going to use today to combat the threats? And, with the sleep, but that was a tough one, I think, for me to figure out because I think it was like because I wasn't working out a lot, I wasn't eating great. It was all building in. It's like I knew what I needed to do, but wasn't doing it. But I just introduced that just because at least if you're listening to this, thinking about your relationship with porn, it is introducing or like an addiction or a bad habit. I think it is introducing something like that that's consistent, where you're able to talk through these things. You're able to, for me, it really helps me because I'm able to think about like where I'm at and then make a plan for like where I'm going to go for the rest of the day. And it's a daily thing. And some days we'll check in back and forth with each other. Typically, whoever goes first, that the next person's response will basically be like, hey, I'm going to respond to like what you had. Then I'm going to say my thing. And they're typically like 5 minutes long. And then when I get his, then I'll respond to his. And then if there's more things we need to do, we might book in later that night. Just like, hey, if one of us is kind of shaky. Um, but that's a thing, right? That's a thing I've introduced into my life, post divorce. And it's been like an absolute game changer for me because it helps me get back on track. And if I'm off track, I'm able to talk about it. We're able to identify it. And like you said, there's data. So like with my little brother, like I kind of know when he gets into something when he might be in a rut where I'm like, okay, hey, here's some things that in the past, like this is what shows me that you're in a rut. Like you were talking about that earlier, like people can kind of tell. And it's the same thing for me. So then we can give each other pretty good feedback because, we know each other. We can say, hey man, like it sounds like you're in a rut right now. And then historically, hey, this is like what has helped before. Typically, right, it's fitness. You know, I don't know if I've ever really relapsed, just when I had a really good workout, that day. And so you can start connecting things, I think, too, to where, hey, like I'm doing these actions. These actions resulted in a pretty good day. Therefore, I should probably do those actions more. I don't know if have you ever done Wim Hof breathing before?
Oh yeah.
Isn't it great? I love Wim Hof.
Yep.
He's awesome.
Yep.
I'll put that in the show notes too, but it's a breathing exercise that you
Hy-
do.
Hyperventilation. Yep. So
I've
taking,
never had a bad day. Oh, go
yeah.
ahead.
Yeah, hyperventilation, Wim Hof breathing, it's wild. So when I found out about him and some of his physical feats, I was intrigued, and the books are great. The information's great. Can come with risk. So there's stories out there where people do too much with it, particularly around water.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, You talk about untapped capacities or devolved capacities that humans have. And Wim Hof showed that he's not just an outlier, that you can train other people to do some of those incredible things of climbing mountains in just shorts when they're covered in snow, and even like responding to a virus injected in your body and then just using breathing to not exhibit the symptoms that everyone else has, and training other people to do it too. Is just really fascinating to think about what we have control over, um,
Mm,
and, and what we can use that for to improve our physiology and functioning, and interconnectedness. Again, we've brought that up a few times, and like how things relate. We talked about the three cliche things, and they're cliche because they're genuinely true for human beings. If you're not sleeping, if you're not eating well, and or you're not moving well, that's going to influence your function in some way, shape, or form. But if you're in a rut, like you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and that pyramid, and at the bottom, the foundation is of course we need food, we need water, we need shelter,
right.
and air, of course, to breathe. And then we need like physical safety, love and belonging, and I think it's like self realization, actualization, something like that on the top. I always have to review that before I write on it. I don't remember those very well, but it's ironic how when we're in a bad place, we compromise our base level needs. So if we're struggling with self actualization or what our soul is saying in this world with all these obligations, all these pressures, and how we're functioning, what do? We fuck ourselves over, and we compromise our own sleep. We start eating poorly. We don't move as often. We have excuses because we're just not in a good place. And then if we focus on tackling challenges that we actually can manage, eh, while trying to like, it doesn't matter how great your physical fitness is if you're not sleeping well. It doesn't
Right.
matter how great your relationships are if you're not moving at all and you're sitting on the couch all day, and that's also going to make you irritable and not sleep as well. The interconnectedness of all these things. So yes, those foundations that I like to talk about, those um that are important for resilience, the mental, the physical, the spiritual, and the social. Absolutely. And some people include financial. To each his own there. I don't include that for me personally. Yes, we need enough money to survive and maybe to support those buckets in whatever capacity, but there is no amount of like that answer is different for everyone. It's important to consider, but I think you could actually live a quite resilient and good life without any money. I think people have demonstrated that throughout history. And so that I leave it off for that reason, consideration for sure. Um, so you think about those buckets and what you can tackle inside of them that are beneficial for you, while remembering how imperative it is to sleep, to eat consciously, whatever that means for you, and to move consciously. Basically, to live consciously. Ruts for me, they make me operate passively and subconsciously, and a lot of us are not going to function very well if our brain is not turned on and we're just resorting to whatever that is in that environment because we're just not connecting and taking advantage of opportunities.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I think you said it too. It's kind of like you're going through like autopilot in a way.
Mhm.
Like you're going through autopilot, you're going through the motions. You're like every day just kind of seems like it's like this cycle, maybe Groundhog Day in a way.
Yeah, good analogy.
So where it's like, how am I going to break this cycle, right? I think we talked through it. I've got a few pages of notes here. Uh, um, but hey, like anything else like off the top of your head that you're thinking about just with this concept? I know we went through a lot, personal examples, things like that, but anything else that's popping out to you, thinking about this?
Just the examples that you have with your brother. I love the daily check-in, and if you don't have that level of connection that you can be vulnerable with somebody daily, there is strength in seeking support. So that's another thing that, like, as you heard me say earlier, that I struggle with. Without question, if you can solve your own problems, do that. Don't dump your problems on everybody all the time and complain about everything. 'Cause we all have things that we could complain about from
Right.
our past, from our present, or potentials of the future. If you can manage it, if you can reframe it, and you can function resiliently within it, do that. But if you find yourself in any semblance of a rut where you are not showing up in the ways that you want to, and you know something's contributing to it, share that with the people that you respect, your support systems that are credible, and you know you can be vulnerable with. And if you don't have that, man, seek it out. There are like-minded people out there for you in whatever domains that you operate within, whatever perspectives you have. There are other like-minded individuals, and find those people, seek them out on purpose, and develop that because there is strength. And if you don't have those people too, there are incredible professional resources too that can at least get you started on having hard conversations about who you are, where you're at, where you want to go. So there's strength and support, but I mean, resilience again is the ability to effectively manage and eventually recover from stress. And when you're in a good enough place, even when you're in a rut, if it is not of dangerous consideration where you're considering harming yourself or others, or you are just at such a limited capacity to function that you need to seek support and nothing else, challenge yourself. Do like pursue stress on purpose. And that doesn't mean like unnecessarily struggle and just like beat
Right.
yourself up, but give yourself the opportunity to have some wins every day that you create for yourself. Give yourself some constraints to operate within that are challenging, that when you accomplish them or even come close to accomplish them, you're proud that you did it. And that's where the internal validation starts coming from. Because if you're not getting it from yourself and you're not hearing it from others, something needs to change. You can shift your state for sure, but it requires effort. So give yourself that opportunity for effort by creating your own challenges in those different domains I talked about, but really in any way that you know is beneficial for you.
Ah, well said, well said. And, something too that I thought about with sleep too. I think when you get better sleep, at least for me, I started to do morning workouts just recently. It's like I felt like, and especially as basketball, when I played basketball at 7 a.m. on a Saturday, my little brother was talking to me. He's like, because I've been doing the should, like, I should become a morning person again. I'll share the last time I was like over, like, what I was like really heavy. I was switching careers. The career I'm at now, I've been at for 10 years. So it's about 10 years ago. And I remember to beat traffic in the morning in Denver, typically it was like probably like a 50-minute drive, but I just did not want to deal with traffic. So I remember I woke up like 4:30 in the morning. I went to the gym, got a workout in. That was like my Goggins days. I feel like because I think I did like 3 workouts a day. Not saying you got to do that, but I'm just saying I was like I remember that time right in my life, and I'm like, there's a part of me that's like, can I capture some of that again to where I can get up early and I can like do the hard thing right away. Cause that's what I loved about the morning workout is you're doing something like hard to start your day.
Yeah.
Then you get done with it. Like tomorrow after I play basketball for 2 hours, it's going to be like 9 a.m. on a Saturday. And I'm gonna be like, dang, I got the whole rest of the day. I know tomorrow the Broncos are playing, so I got to watch the Broncos. Hopefully, beat the Bills. But you feel like you have like the rest of the day out there where you're like, wow, like, hey, if I did nothing else today, I did something hard. And I think that's important, right? When you're in a rut is like you were saying, is to have these challenges for yourself that push you a little bit. And they don't have to be crazy initially, right? Like for me initially it was like, I'm just gonna get in the gym. Like I got to make it to the gym on time. That was like my first thing. I was like, you have to make it there before 7. Like that was the only thing in my head. I was barely even thinking about playing. I was like, just get there. Like put your foot in the gym. And now it's led to like, okay, like do a little cardio more now in the week to feel like a little bit, like you're not losing your wind every time you're going up and down the court. So I really like that. I think that's great because that helped me. I mean, ultimately, like I said at the beginning of the episode, right? Like I reached out to you. I said, hey, I feel like I was going through a rut, like I'm rounding a corner. And I think that's part of the reason I wanted to talk about it was just to share some of that, be vulnerable about at least using me as like a guinea pig to say, hey, this is like what I was going through, being the heaviest I've ever weighed, post divorce, still just thinking about, hey, like what am I going to do when I grow up, that kind of thing. But I feel so much better about it now because I'm doing things that are hard and and it makes I can feel it inside. It makes me feel like, hey, I'm getting like that chip that momentum back, in my life, and it's a great feeling to have, to get out of that.
Yeah.
And now it's just for me, it's like, hey, just keep going, just keep doing that, and if you have like one off day, like get back to it quickly because I found out if you don't do that, that one day that you take off turns into 2, turns into 3, and it can really snowball pretty quickly.
Yeah, there's no better way to start a day than with a win. So you finding ways to do that in the morning, like you said, it makes the rest of the day feel like, okay, let's go. And to your point about doing hard things, like when you do hard things on purpose, the other hard things outside of control in your life feel at least a little easier. They don't go away. You still got to manage them. It might be a different domain, but the skills that you can acquire from doing hard things on purpose in whatever area of life that you're trying to improve, the real challenge is, where am I successful? Where am I resilient right now? And how can I translate those concepts to other domains of my life? But when you do hard things on purpose with a prepared mindset ahead of time, with a known amount of time that you're going to be involved in that struggle, so then you can recover from it, you start training the muscles, training the skill that is resilience. And think about not, yes, do physical things to improve your cardiovascular health, blah, 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 everything
Right.
else, but also think about how does this improve my mindset, my resilience, my function to be a father, to be a husband, to be a naval officer, to be a good man? Like, how can I take these lessons of success on the mats, or physical pursuits, or work, and translate them elsewhere so I can show up across domains with the same concepts that apply everywhere?
Yeah, that's like one more thing, like, just going to church every Sunday for me, you know? I think that's a thing for me that's translated to other things. It's like consistency,
Yep.
going to this thing, every weekend if I can. So, yeah, I think there, like we talked about physical examples, but I think we also talked, about mental, social, and spiritual examples too. Um, so, yeah,
I got a good mental one. It kind of applies socially, but
yeah, let's do it.
charitable interpretations of others. So just mentally, without even saying a word,
Mm,
you see someone do something you don't necessarily like, or that usually, I hate the word triggers. I usually like to say, if you're triggered by something, make that trigger action within yourself so you can trigger an effective response, like a dirty way to train. Like, don't use the word trigger like as justifications for poor behavior. No, if you become emotional activated from something outside of yourself, use that as an opportunity for reframing. But when it comes to the actions of others, charitable interpretations toward them, they're probably in a bad place. They're probably in a rut. And if you can do
totally.
that inside your head, you start training cognitive flexibility. You start training the ability to reframe situations. And even if you're wrong about, of course, reframe to something that's believable. So if you don't believe it's not going to happen, but even if you're wrong about it, who cares? It's outside your control, anyways. You're training a skill that's beneficial for you mentally. And if you can do that with others, whether it's on the road, at work, at home, definitely with your kids. I mean, they're developing minds. They're doing the best they can with what they have. They are good, but they might be having a hard time. They're not trying to give you a hard time. I tell myself that every day.
Yeah, that's something too. Yeah, because I think sometimes when you're in a rut, you're like, I'm the only one going through this. Like I'm the only one. I mean, I felt like that with porn, right? It's like I'm the only one struggling with this. Like no one's gonna understand. And I think it's not like saying like everyone's. I mean, everyone struggles with stuff. Everyone has ruts. But I guess like having that charitable interpretation too, that others are willing to listen, or that you're giving people the benefit of the doubt too,
Yeah.
because I think that can happen when you're in a rut is like you kind of, yeah, like I'm kind of the same way too sometimes. Like it's like maybe I'm less approachable, or I'm less talkative or less charitable.
Yep.
And that's a good mental exercise as well. Well, Kyle, anything else, man?
No, brother. Always a pleasure. Good talking to you. Proud of you. Thanks for reaching out. Great time, just like the first time. Look forward to the next one, and keep up the great work.
Yeah, and everybody that's watching right now, make sure that you subscribe to Kyle. And just his writings are fantastic. And I got to start jumping on some of those daily activities. And yeah, and again, episode 45, all this stuff I'm going to put in the show notes and everything. But that episode is, I mean, it's a good one to listen to, I think, after this one, or, just any time too, because I think that one you really kind of broke down the mechanics of stress, stressors, resilience, maintaining it. So that's a really nice pairing that we did. And yeah, we'll definitely have you on again. And besides that, guys, thanks for spending your Friday with us. That's super cool. Or whenever you're listening, thank you for your time. And Kyle, thank you for your time. Lots of wisdom there. And yeah, everybody, hope you have a great rest of your day, great rest of your night, and keep fighting the good fight.
Stay
Talk to y'all
resilient, brother.
later.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.